Philip Lasker reporting there. And joining me now from Canberra is Minister for Resources in Northern Australia and Energy, Josh Frydenberg, who for most of this year was also the Assistant Treasurer. Minister, welcome.
Nice to be with you, Ticky.
Well, look, it's a very big day for the government. You actually flagged on Murray in August that there was unlikely to be a ban on self-managed super borrowing for property. I see Chris Bowen coming out today saying, really, the government is leaving one of the sort of higher risk factors standing.
Well, Ticky, as you know, I don't have portfolio responsibility anymore for these particular areas. This was a very important and significant announcement by the Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer. A lot of thought has gone into these proposals.
Well,
and I think
a lot of thought by you, a good 8 months, I reckon.
Yeah, there was a lot of work and a lot of industry consultation, and that was acknowledged by the Treasurer and the Prime Minister today, and I thank them for that. But I think consumers will be much better off as a result of the government's announcement today, particularly the quality of financial planning in this country, the competition in the superannuation space and the resilience of our financial system with the new capital adequacy ratios.
But what about not putting in that ban? Because, I mean, does this say more about the fact that the government is concerned about maintaining some support under the property market?
Well, look, self-managed super funds are an important feature of the system, and I think the government's keeping a watching brief on this area, but I'll leave that to the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer, but certainly they're very focused on ensuring that there is stability in our financial system. And like I said, Ticky, these announcements today and these reforms are far and wide, long overdue after the Wallace inquiry was some time ago.
Just one more on the super side, because I know you spent a bit of time on that. Just on the default super, employees will now have a choice of where super money is invested. Do you think this will reduce fees across the super industry?
I certainly do, and I've always been in favour of more competition in that space. I think that's going to produce a better outcome for people with their money in super. And the good thing about the announcements today is we'll get a definition of superannuation in legislation, and people have to understand that it's a form of retirement income. It's not a form of asset accumulation. It's a form of retirement income, either as a substitute or a supplement to the pension. And I think greater competition in the default fund space will be very well received.
Let's move to coal. Over the weekend, you very much came out in support of the approval of the $16 billion Adani Carmichael coal mine. You cited a moral case for coal in terms of the many Indians, for example, who are literally burning dung for their power. The Greens have since come out and said, well, look, 4 out of 5 Indians aren't even connected to the grid. Is there really a moral case, as you talk about?
Well, there are more than 100 million Indians who don't have any access to electricity, and more than 300 million who have under electricity. And the point is in India is about taking electricity to the masses and energy supplies. So the grid can be expanded, and what we've seen in India over the last 6 years is a doubling in the coal-fired power generation in that country. Now, India produces its own coal, but it can't meet its own demand, hence it does import significant amounts. And groups like Adani have already invested some $3 billion here in Australia. They are hoping to invest a lot more, as you say, create thousands of jobs in the process, and importantly provide energy to a country that needs it to provide electricity to people who currently are without. So that moral argument is often missed by the green activists who oppose any type of fossil fuels.
Tourism is an industry now more important than ever, particularly with our dollar. Can you really say, and also you're the Minister, of course, for the North, can you really say that a coal mine of that size will not affect the reef?
Well, our understanding, and there's been plenty of environmental tests, is that the reef will be protected, and we have just been commended by the World Heritage Organisation for the work that we have done in protecting the reef, and Greg Hunt has been very focused on that. So we think we are doing absolutely the right thing by the reef, the right thing by the environment, but also by inviting this sort of development in Australia, helping to create much needed jobs and export income for our country.
Josh Frydenberg, you've just come back from Japan, talking up more investment in LNG in Australia. Is that likely to be coming? Because some people feel we're over-invested in it.
Well, you're right, there's been significant investment, Ticky, to date, some $200 billion in LNG projects over the last decade or more. And what we've just seen last week was the first shipment of LNG from Gladstone by Santos to Korea, and that is part of 3 LNG projects in Gladstone with some $80 billion worth of investment. I recently went to the Ichthys site in Darwin, where 2 big companies, INPEX as well as Total, have invested nearly $50 billion in that project. It's the largest construction project in Australia and will be providing up to 10% of Japan's gas needs.
So briefly, will the Japanese look to invest more, for example, with Browse in years to come?
Well, as you know, a final investment decision hasn't been taken on Browse, but I know, having spoken to the parties in Japan as well as other parties here in Australia, there is a lot of interest in this particular project. It would probably be a floating LNG project, but certainly global energy demand has increased, Ticky, and will continue to increase by up to a third between now and 2040, according to the IEA.
Minister, we've been overtaken by events. Love to talk to you more on gas, and will do in the future, I hope. Thank you.
Great to be with you, Ticky.